Good morning. Wow, I just had to stand up here and you all just stopped talking. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here for our State of the City presented by Consigli. I'm Heather McGrail, the CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber, and we're so happy to have this full house this morning to share this time with Mayor Ruais and hear about all of his reflections over his time in the office until now and all of his intentions and plans for the future. So first and foremost, have to thank Mayor Ruais for joining us here today. Where are you? Okay. Hi. And also, we have to give a round of applause as he is a new father to his beautiful baby girl. So incredible. Also want to thank the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, of course, for sharing their amazing space with us today, wonderful partners that they are. And of course, all of you for being here and taking time out of your day to share time with us. So I first have to go through another list of long recognitions, not too long, of those that are in the room. Because we have a number of city leaders in this room on the mayor's team that really work hard for the city of Manchester every day. So I would love for you to wave a hand, stand if you are comfortable with it, but let me just give a few recognitions. So I know we have Police Chief Marr over there. And I know we have Fire Chief Ryan Cashin. Where are you? Director of Economic Development, Jody Nizaka. The Director of Homelessness Initiatives, Irina Owens. Director of the Health Department, Anna Thomas. And I believe our superintendent is still arriving, yes? Do we have Dr. Camille yet? No, okay. And also wanted to recognize former Mayor Bob Baines and former Mayor Syl Dupuis here with us today. A couple of other recognitions of our Chamber Board of Director members in the room. We have our board chair, Trini Houghton of Ripple Effect Studio. And Ernesto Burden of Yankee Publishing. Ernesto. Jennifer Gilkey, Dartmouth Health. Mike Licata of Eversource. Nicole Davis of Hoyle, Tanner and Associates. Okay. Shana Horalchuk of Sea Science Center. Josh Wright of Wells Fargo. Did I miss anyone coming in? Board members, John Zimmerman. I just saw you, Doubletree. Thank you so much. Who else am I missing? And please stand up, Ileana. Ileana Ile. Ile? Yes, from Morgan Stanley. So I wanted to thank all of you for being here. Thank our board of directors. Thank all of our city leaders and everyone else in the room. I know there are many that I did not mention, so please forgive me. But there's too many of you to keep track of. I would also like to recognize our sponsors, of course, and today's presenting sponsor is Consigli, so thank you so much for your support of today's program. We also have Eversource as a sponsor, an investing sponsor, and our advocate sponsor is New Hampshire Healthy Families. Round of applause, yeah. And next, I'd like to welcome Vance Fryman, who is the New Hampshire Regional Director for Consigli, to say a few comments. Vance.
Well, good morning, all, and thank you, Heather. It's great to be with such a nice crowd and a full house, no less. As Heather said, I am the Regional Director for Consigli Construction for New Hampshire. I am also a Manchester resident living in Ward 12. So the success and the great things happening in this city are important to me, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level as well. If you're not familiar with Consigli, we're a fifth-generation general contractor and construction manager. We have a number of offices across the Northeast. Locally, we've been fortunate to work with clients like UNH and Dartmouth Hitchcock. We just completed the manufacturing facility for New Balance by the airport, which I'm sure a number of you have seen. And we're really excited to be starting work this spring with the Manchester School Department on additions and renovations to the Hillside and McLaughlin middle schools. So we're really proud of the presence we've established here, and we look forward to building on that. I came here about 10 years ago, and in that time I've come to know and befriend a lot of you in this room. And something that's always impressed me about Manchester is the power of the relationships we have here. And beyond that, just what a friendly community this is, and how open people are to accepting people coming in to be part of Manchester. I'll make a comparison. I'm going to pick on our neighbors to the south. Anybody here from Massachusetts? Not a hand. I could say good. Sorry. There's an old saying. How do you make friends? Where do you make friends in Boston? Anyone? In kindergarten? We're not like that here. Here, we know how to welcome people, how to incorporate them into the community, and how to work together and support together to accomplish great things. Now, Mayor, I hope we're not too close, because we just moved our office to 875 Elm Street, directly across from City Hall. And I know when the mayor looks out his window, he sees my window. I really hope you don't get tired of seeing it. And you're welcome anytime. Consigli has about 70 employees here in the Granite State. We're going to continue to grow that and continue to work with the businesses and the institutions and the municipalities in the state to build great buildings that help create a better tomorrow for all of us. Mayor, I think you had some great accomplishments during your first year in office. So on behalf of Consigli, we are really proud to sponsor this morning's conversation, and we look forward to hearing about your plans and your vision for 2025. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to bring up what you're all waiting for, which is Scott Spradling, who is what they're waiting for, who is an amazing moderator for us for these state of forums that we do, but is also an incredible chamber volunteer, the chair of our Government Affairs Committee, and owner of the Spradling Group. So Scott's going to moderate the rest of this program, but I wanted to not be remiss in thanking Mayor Ruais for all of the collaborations he's done with our chamber to date. Some of you have participated in those, such as the Future Focus Manchester forums that we've been doing, where we really dig into a topic so that the business community can understand what the city is doing and why on that particular topic. So we'll be keeping those going throughout the next stretch of this year, and hopefully much farther, and really appreciate all of the collaborations that we've been able to forge between the city and the chamber over the past year. So I'm going to hand it over to Scott now to do his thing.
Good morning, everyone. Happy February. Thank you for being here. The packed house shows the investment that all of you make in our community, and I am grateful. It's great to be here. We have a very simple format. We will call up Mayor Ruais here in just a second. He will deliver a message, his State of the City address, and then he and I will sit down, and based on some questions that we received from email, but also from the conversation that we had here a year ago when he was newly minted mayor and just into his first few weeks of his first year, we'll have some continuation conversations. We know a lot of the priorities by heart at this point, so we've taken those topics, we've taken your emails, and I'll facilitate the conversation for the second half. So without further ado, he's getting used to the title at this point. It's not been a day, it's not been 2 days. He's recognized that the demands are heavy, that there's always a need and a want, and that you have to be ready, willing, and able to drop everything and run and serve and play the role extremely well. And I think he's managing it. It's only been a few days, so ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce Brielle's dad.
I like that. That's got a good ring to it. Thank you, Scott, and good morning to everybody. Today marks my second State of the City address, and it's an event that I truly look forward to. It's wonderful to see so many of our department heads, our aldermen, school board members, and dignitaries throughout the city of Manchester. I deeply appreciate all of your dedication and what you do for the Queen City. And thank you for the invitation to join the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce here at the NHIOP the perfect venue to deliver a speech. I remember being here years ago when I was working for a congressman. I was the staffer in the back frantically checking emails and sending text messages. I had more hair back in those days. But that position reminds me of just how blessed that I am to be here today in my current position, and it just goes to show you that you just got to fake it till you make it for a little while. Speaking of amazing changes of fate, I had an interesting thing happen 11 days ago when my wife and I became parents. Thank you. Baby Brielle came a little early, proving once again that man makes plans and God laughs. My wife is my hero. We spent a week at Elliott Hospital, and she was doing homework during that time period to make sure that she could finish her bachelor's degree on time. She was still working remotely for her job during that time as well. She's an absolute rock star. And I mentioned before that she immigrated from Peru, and I was joking with her after Brielle was born that while being married to me isn't the American dream, I think she's doing quite well for herself right now. I know this sounds like something that a politician should say, but I genuinely love every single second of this job. It is a privilege to wake up every morning and have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those who call the Queen City home. Standing here, I'm reminded of the many extraordinary public figures who have taken their turn at this podium. Abraham Lincoln wasn't one of them. However, I do want to wish our 16th president a very happy 216th birthday. He's one of my favorite, most inspiring figures in political life, and I'm going to have a little bit more on him later on. So you might be wondering, what are some of my thoughts as I reflect on 1 year here at City Hall? The first reality is this. While my time in this position may be finite, my responsibility to the city is indefinite. It's incumbent upon all of us to leave Manchester a better place than when we found it. I want to be able to look back and say, when the time here is done, that we listened and we got things done. In the final analysis, we are accountable. I don't have the luxury of just saying no all the time. We have to find compromise, and we have to bring people together. Sometimes both sides of the political aisle can get mad, but the only thing that matters is that we are delivering for the people who sent us to hold these offices and these positions of trust. You also need to show courage and conviction when faced with criticism, whether it's earned or unearned. And as I look out on this audience, I know that every president, every CEO, every executive here can relate to what I'm saying. One of the greatest things about being mayor is all the people that you get to meet. At the ribbon cuttings, coin tosses at high school football games, big events on Elm Street, graduations, and yes, town halls. You may have heard about the 14 town halls that we've held. We held one in every ward last year, and we've started making the rounds again. It is the best way to get feedback and learn about what's on people's minds. It also keeps me humble, and that's totally okay. I take it in stride because of all politicians, being mayor is the most closely elected, or the closest to the people who elected us to serve. So what have we been up to, and where are we going? Of all the issues I deal with, I believe safety is my most important duty and one that is non-negotiable. Fortunately, we have two strong and capable partners in this pursuit, MPD's Chief Peter Marr and MFD's Chief Ryan Cashin. We all share that same everyday attention to detail philosophy. Bail reform is an essential component of public safety. In January, I testified in support of HB 592, which would keep violent and repeat offenders off of our streets and behind bars. Just this past week, we've had two more examples of why this is extraordinarily important. One involved a man stabbed over a dozen times a block away from my office. The other was a bank robbery. Both individuals were arrested for their crime and released on PR bail. In what world does this make sense? This is especially maddening when we learned more about this. The man arrested for stabbing had a previous conviction in October for domestic violence. The guy who held up the bank had 3 previous bank robberies on his record out of New York. Clearly, we need bail reform now more than ever. Where is the justice for the victims? Where is the justice for the police officers? Where is the justice for our residents and our businesses? On what planet is this acceptable? And what tragedy is going to have to befall the city before we take action and fix this once and for all? This problem is not just anecdotal. Strong numbers back up this type of criminal behavior. In 2024, there were 2,971 adults arrested in Manchester. These individuals accounted for 4,551 arrests because 27% of them were arrested more than once. Of the 2,971 arrested, 715 of them, or 24%, were out on bail at the time of their arrest. This is entirely unacceptable. There could be nothing more transformative in the city of Manchester than taking nearly 1,000 criminals off of our streets. The city would literally change overnight. Thank you. Our police department is filled with heroes from top to bottom. Like many departments, we are experiencing a shortage in officers. Our vacancies typically hover around 20. We ask them to do a tough job, and the difficulty of their work is compounded when they do the hard work, arrest someone, and that person then is then let out to reoffend. I've also testified in support of legislation that would raise mandatory minimum sentences for fentanyl distribution. Those who peddle this poison should be taken off of our streets immediately. Last year, we eliminated a program and transferred the balance of the funds to the Manchester Police Department to create a greater police presence on our streets and in our parks in the downtown. This has resulted in hundreds of additional arrests and citations and dramatically changed the look and feel of the downtown. We also gave the police department an additional $100,000 in ARPA funds to help with recruiting to fill these vacancies. As we enter into the budget season this year, we will ensure our police have everything that they need to do their jobs effectively. And I will continue to work with the governor and the legislature to pass Group 2 pension reform to help with retention. For years, the Manchester Fire Department had applied for a SAFER grant, which provides federal funding to bring on new firefighters. This $3.7 million grant is allowing us to bring on 12 new, fully funded firefighters for 3 years, dramatically increasing our ability to respond to emergencies within the city. Thank you, Chief Cashin, for all of your hard work on this initiative. We have to be responsible in this budgeting, and we are budgeting now to handle the eventual loss of these federal funds to ensure that our taxpayers are protected. On the campaign trail and throughout my first year in office, my top goal has been to increase housing in our city, more specifically, affordable housing. It's telling that when I speak with those that are involved in healthcare or education or in business around the city, we often don't talk about healthcare, business, or education. We talk about housing. Manchester has been designated the hottest housing market in the country and ranked one of the top places to live, which is great news because it means that our city is a destination for families and businesses, and we are thriving. But it also creates an upward pressure on housing prices. And with a 0.6% vacancy rate, presents challenges in affordability. A healthy housing market is around 6%, so we literally have 1/100th of the housing we need in the city of Manchester. However, we are making progress. In 2024, the city issued 535 certificates of occupancy. 600 new dwelling units came online. 707 units are in active construction. Through the use of 79E, we approved affordable housing units at the Lamont Hanley building. We made a $200,000 expenditure from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to create 8 units for previously unhoused women that just opened 2 weekends ago. And we supported $1.65 million of federal funds for affordable housing on Pearl Street, and right now there are 300 affordable units that are in construction in the city of Manchester. Thank you. Manchester has been designated a housing champion by the state's Department of Business and Economic Affairs. This qualifies the city to apply for millions in grant funding to help advance innovative solutions and infrastructure projects. Huge shout out to our Economic Development Director, Jody Nizaka, for her work on this proposal to receive this designation. We're also in the process of conducting our first zoning rewrite in over 20 years and only the 4th in our city's history. With tremendous public input, Manchester is committed to making our ordinances more business and user-friendly, as well as making certain they reflect what our city needs now and into the future. A thank you is in order to the Planning and Community Development Director, Jeff Belanger, and his staff for the yeoman's work that they are putting into fostering open dialogue with the city, the aldermen, and myself to get this right and get this implemented. We got creative, and we sold 15 vacant city lots at public auction, generating $1.13 million for the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you to our tax collector, Brenda Mazowick. When was the last time we said thank you to the tax collector, right? Who has been the driving force for this in the tax department and is now an auction expert. We're about to undertake our second round of this initiative, and I would encourage all of you to attend the next auction. It is a blast. The issue I spend the majority of my time on addressing is homelessness. There is no silver bullet or quick fix to this challenge, but our team of Irina Owens and Owen Westover work on it diligently every single day. It truly is a mix of mental health and addiction issues, unaddressed trauma, lack of affordable housing, and more. None of these scream overnight solutions. My message on homelessness is simple. It should be rare, brief, and one time. As I've stated from the beginning, this needs to be addressed in a comprehensive way, ensuring our ordinances and laws are followed and enforced, addressing the underlying drivers, and creating more affordable housing. Over the last year, we have implemented 16 different initiatives with that goal in mind. We know addiction can be an ever-changing issue, but we are proud to report that overdoses in the city of Manchester are falling significantly. Our Recovery Overdose Addiction and Response Team, known as ROAR, is on the street preventing overdoses and connecting people with life-saving services. They are running into the burning buildings of people's lives and extinguishing the flames. Thanks to their work, drug and fatal overdoses are down by 21% and 24%, respectively. I want to thank Andrew Warner, his team, and our Director of Public Health, Anna Thomas, for their life-saving work on this issue. So we can get lost in statistics sometimes, but what do those numbers mean when we break them down into human terms? It means that in 2024, we had fewer broken hearts, fewer parentless children, fewer lost futures, more hope, more tomorrows, and more lives recovered. And that is something that we should all celebrate. We also banned camping in public spaces, the first city in the country to do so following the U.S. Supreme Court's decision upholding that right in the Grants Pass case. As I previously mentioned, we are implementing our belief that if you want help and you need help in the city of Manchester, it exists. But if you are here to ignore our laws and ignore our ordinances, we are not going to tolerate that. With the additional police presence we have, our streets and parks are cleaner and more enjoyable than they have been in years. Our city's engagement center is another critical piece to solving our homeless problem. From July to December of 2024, over 800 provider connections were made. More than 35 individuals were housed. 11 gained employment. 8 entered rehab and detox. And 30 vital documents like birth certificates and Social Security cards were issued. There's an important subset to our homeless population, our veterans. Men and women who bravely served our country who now find themselves without stable housing. Some are in shelters, others couch surf, some are living in cars. Whatever their situation, it is heartbreaking, and it is completely unacceptable. In September, we launched an initiative to effectively end veterans' homelessness by the end of my term in January of 2026. At the time of that announcement, we had identified 47 homeless veterans in the city of Manchester. When the gauntlet was laid down, our community stood up. Thanks to 10 of our local landlords, along with a dozen community stakeholders led by Harbor Care, I am proud to report that 29 veterans now have long-term, sustainable roofs over their heads. And then we realized that some of our veterans just needed help with a security deposit, money for an application, or for emergency housing. Our community rallied yet again. This time, 6 veterans groups and 1 individual veteran donated $7,000 to our new sustainability fund established to cover those needs. To be clear, these initiatives are not handouts, they are hand-ups for our veterans who just need a little bit more support on the home front. This idea speaks to a larger point that I would like to make about the direction we are heading with homelessness. We must break this number down into manageable, bite-sized pieces, and we must address the pressure valve that we have in our emergency shelters. When there is a person that is ready to leave a shelter, there's simply not enough transitional or supportive units and not enough affordable housing. This condemns them to the current situation that they are in and condemns them to repeating the same cycle over and over again. Along with veterans, we have far too many seniors, families, and youths who are homeless in Manchester. Couple that with those who struggle with mental health and addiction, and you can begin to tackle this issue by specifically targeting these unique groups who have individual needs. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. This is why we started with veterans, and we will begin to expand to these other groups as we continue to make progress. To be clear, our work has not and will not stop to help everyone along the way, but I do think that coordinated, targeted strikes at specific populations can make a significant difference. We also have an exciting project that we are working on that has the potential to greatly increase the number of transitional units in our city while getting more unhoused off of our streets and into stable housing. We have a real opportunity to change a significant number of lives with this initiatives. I only wish this address were a month later and I could tell you all about it, but stay tuned, we'll have more to say about this. Another group that's not far, or another important group that's never far from my thoughts are our students. Ensuring Manchester kids get the best education possible hits home to me now more than ever. Whether it's public, private, parochial, charter, or homeschooling, a child deserves an education that is best suited to their needs. Parents should not be excluded from educational decisions, and I do believe that education freedom counts can be an important part of this mix. Our educational system is inherently important to the long-term health of our city. While more work remains, we have a lot of exciting things going on in our school district. Last year, the district graduated nearly 800 students who earned almost $500,000 in scholarships. For anyone who went to, yes, big congratulations. For anyone who went to the scholarship events last year, it was like these kids were walking away like Santa Claus. They were throwing big gobs of money over their shoulders. Central's first robotics team reached the World Championships. Students won accolades in arts and music competition at the state level. In athletics, district students earned state championships and saw a resurgence of programs, notably including football at Memorial and West. Following declines in prior years, the district saw stabilization in overall enrollment for the start of the 24-25 school year. The overall graduation rate has increased year over year as the district continues its focus on career-connected learning pathways, with clear career exploration starting as early as elementary school. There's good news regarding attendance, too. Our rates are going up. Kids in class more often means better learning across all grades. 20% of our students are English learners. And with 57 languages spoken in our schools, we must remain committed to ensuring they have all the resources necessary to be both successful in school and upon graduation. Building off this effort, the district launched a dual language immersion program. This first one is in English to Spanish, or Spanish to English. It's the first in the state at Bakersville Elementary, with the second immersion program, French to English, set to launch in the near future. We will work to continue to increase our attendance and graduation rates while eliminating distractions in our classroom like cell phones. A few additional successes I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. To use an aviation term, the status at the airport is ceiling and visibility unlimited. Manchester welcomed 3 new airlines in 2024 and now offers 10 new routes, including JetBlue, the white whale for the city of Manchester. A partnership, yes, please cheer for that. I think we were on this stage 2 years ago and we were talking about what do we need to do to bring JetBlue in, and we were talking with Ted about it at the time, and now that we got it, I feel like I can retire and I don't have to, I've done my duty and I can go home now. If you've noticed a big difference in the cleanliness of our downtown and our parks, you'd be correct. Supported by the business and commercial property owners of the Central Business Service District and led by Jose Sanchez and Director Nizaka, our new street ambassadors work in all types of weather. They have provided the following services over the past 6 months, and they have made an incredible difference in our city. They collected 82,410 pounds of trash. They removed 820 stickers, pressure washed 950 block faces, removed 606 pieces of graffiti, and got rid of 174 large items of debris. Next up, the city budget. I've met with all of our department heads, and we're right in the thick of it now, so I don't want to give too much away, but I will mention a couple things. Last year, despite inheriting a $10.7 million deficit on the city side alone, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen was still able to deliver a budget that came further under the tax cap than any budget since the inception of the cap. I will never gut essential city services, and I will always put the taxpayer first. I want to thank Alderman Morgan for his leadership in righting a wrong. For 6 years, the city has operated without a charter-mandated independent city auditor. The alderman and I worked together to identify funding to bring on this important position to ensure our city dollars are spent wisely, with oversight, and with accountability. 2 years ago, the Manchester School District entered into contracts that brought their employees to market rates, giving them a competitive chance to land the best educators. This year, we have a similar opportunity on the city side with our own comprehensive compensation study that has been completed. I have ridden on the garbage trucks, removed graffiti, done ride-alongs with the police in Squad 1 at the fire department while visiting all of our other departments, and I know that we have the finest city workers around. Yes. I'm committed to ensuring that our city workers are compensated fairly, while also continuing to ensure that our taxpayers are protected. And I want to thank Director Lisa Drabick and her team for their steadfast leadership in shepherding this through the process these last few years. I've talked about the countdown clock in my office a lot, and today the clock tells me that I have 328 days left in office. Yes, it's a good visual and it's a good conversation starter when people come into my office, but as I always try and tell my wife, I do have a method for that madness. We cannot and we must not focus solely on the tactical. We have to simultaneously implement a long-term strategy to take Manchester to an even higher plane. Far too often, politicians think only in terms of election cycles and not what's best for their community over the long term. It's tremendously important for us as leaders to lay out a vision for what we would like to accomplish while also planting the seeds for future success. And that's what we are committed to doing here. In the coming weeks, we will unveil our Together We Rise, 50 Initiatives, One Future, collection of plans we would like to implement in the coming years. These ideas come from our countless town halls, community, aldermanic meetings, and more. It's aggressive, but that's what people expect from the city that is as enduring as its iconic mill buildings, the city that always leads the way. So let me give you a sneak peek into some of these ideas. Our downtown should be as bright as our future. You look at photos of other cities, and their downtowns are always lit up like the 4th of July. This creates a warm and welcoming environment. It also helps to deter crime. In our upcoming budget, we will allocate funds for this purpose and work to get them installed as soon as possible. One of the consistent refrains at our town hall meetings is the condition of our roads. I'm committed to making an historic investment this year in our roads. It's becoming clear that artificial intelligence is the wave of the future, and we are seeing more cities utilize this technology to help deliver services. We will develop both an AI policy guide for the city's future and also seek to implement things like an AI chatbot to facilitate user interaction between our departments and our residents. For the first time in our city's history, we have hired a grant coordinator, which presents us with an incredible opportunity to deliver more resources to our community without burdening the taxpayer. Utilizing this position, we will increase communication and collaboration between our city departments, residents, and nonprofits to help advance our service delivery. And I want to thank Alderman Vinson for his leadership on the board for this initiative. He's bashful. Through the work of our community needs assessment, it has become clear that Manchester needs an age-friendly action plan for our senior population. The William B. Cashin Senior Activity Center on the west side has been a tremendous success, but we know the need for services offered there is growing. With this in mind, we have already begun conducting a study to develop an action plan for our seniors' future. Another thank you to Director Thomas and her entire team for identifying this issue and taking action for our seniors. That's 5 of the 50 ideas we have. In the coming weeks, we'll unveil the rest of them, and I can't wait to release that plan. I began my remarks this morning wishing Abraham Lincoln a happy birthday, and I'll end my remarks with some final thoughts on our 16th president. Lincoln faced numerous challenges during his presidency, the Civil War being the most obvious, of course. While none of us can match his extraordinary courage in preserving the Union, Lincoln's management of this country's greatest existential crisis is a masterclass in leadership, setting clear goals, staying focused, and being committed to the greater good. He showed in his actions magnanimity in victory and defeat. He was not known to yell and scream. He was prudent. He used humor. He had no ego. He took the long view, and he welcomed differing opinions. Lincoln also left a legacy for everyone in a position of power to emulate. He showed us that leadership is about meeting your moment, because at one point or another, everyone in this room has had to meet our own moment. I think about this often. It is easy to get lost in the day-to-day grind or give in to the loudest voices in the room and take short-term victories that can give you a sugar high. It is far more difficult to take the long view, to ignore the noise, the petty squabbles, and do what you believe in the end is right. We are better than the political rhetoric of our day suggests, and it hurts our ability to get things done. Years from now, when all the speeches are given, all the votes have been taken, and all the campaigns have long since been run, how do we want to be remembered? To me, this is easy. We should strive to be remembered by the moments that when the chips were down, we rolled up our sleeves, we worked together, and we made the difficult decisions to move our city forward. The strength of America has always been with its citizens. The strength of our city is in you. We are a great American city with so much to celebrate. We are blessed with a foundation of residents, civic leaders, and business owners who care deeply about our hometown, people who work every day to ensure that it flourishes. As mayor, my focus is on making Manchester the best mid-sized city in this country, and I'm proud to report to you this morning that the state of our city is strong. Thank you for your time this morning and for everything you do to make Manchester a vibrant city. I appreciate you being a part of our city's story and our bright future. The opportunity to lead Manchester as its 49th mayor is the privilege of a lifetime, and I will be forever grateful for the opportunity and trust the city has placed in me. Thank you all.
All right, can you all hear me okay? Yeah. All right, good. Mayor, thank you for that. Very high energized speech. I feel like I should have had a Red Bull before coming to the center for you.
I had
this
about
morning.
9. So
Sweet.
we're even.
So you know the folks in this room. I know the folks in this room. Some of my favorite people are here in this space right now. The really sort of like where the rubber meets the road, the doers of our city, real leaders in a variety of realms. And one of the vibes that I got as I was doing my hugs hello and just catching up with people is just a general sense of uncertainty. Not necessarily because of what's happening at City Hall, but because we're in a period of change. And change is, by human nature, a little unpredictable and anxiety triggered. Mm-hmm. I know many of us are watching what's going on with interest of the policies being set, decisions being made in our nation's capital. And federal funds is a big conversation. There are nonprofits in this room. There are departments in the city of Manchester that rely on that flow of funding. So when I was asking people, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? What I got back was, I don't know. How is it going? How are we doing? There's a sense of confidence about Manchester, but there's a sense of concern, big picture. What would you say about that? And what role are the federal funds going to look like in your budget? And what can you say to folks that rely on it?
Sure. So a few different things on this. When the first kind of the OMB issued their directive and their guidance, we immediately got on the phone with the governor's office. The federal delegation was really great with reaching out, asking us what we were hearing and experiencing within the city. We immediately, my staff reached out to all of our department heads and say, how would this impact you by 500 COB today, or by 5 o'clock COB today? We need to know exactly how this would impact you. So we had a plan in place were that to go forward. What I would say is that I think it can be easy, as I kind of mentioned in the speech, but it can be really easy to get caught up in the noise. And I get it. I worked at a nonprofit I worked at Catholic Charities for 2 years. Before that, I worked for a nonprofit for 6 or 7 years. And so I get the strain on nonprofits. It can be really easy to get lost in the noise of the day, but recognize that the system is still holding, that there are lawsuits currently in place that are not allowing for the cuts to go forward at present time. I do think that the goal, the intent, is admirable. I do think that we have to cut federal spending. I do think that is important, but I do think that it has to be done more with a scalpel and picking off where the money should be cut. But I think that the process worked. There were individuals who raised their voices. They said, we do not want to see these cuts. The initiative was rescinded. The draft or the guidance from OMB was rescinded. But I do think going forward, this is going to ultimately, I think, be done through the legislative process as they go through reconciliation on the House and Senate side. And this is where, it's incumbent upon us to reach out to our federal delegation and say, look, these are the things that we don't want to see cut. Maybe look at some of these other locations. But I think it's tremendously important for those of us who hold elected office, and I think for all of us, not to rile up people. Right. And say, look, we have to take a deep breath. We have to recognize that we have a process in place where one branch of government doesn't get to rule the day over the other branches of government, and that we have an opportunity to respond and be sober, confident, competent individuals in this process.
Kind of reminds me of what Vance said in his intro about the value of relationships.
Right.
You've got to lean in on those relationships and kind of communicate, hey, if this is happening, this is what the impact's going to be. Mm-hmm. So use the voice, right?
Right.
So let's talk about the city budget. And I know you're still working on it. You're deep into it, but it's your second one. How is it feeling? How is it different from the first?
So the first one, I mentioned that we had the $10.7 million number. So that was a conglomeration of 4% cost of living adjustment. That was $6.5 million, $2 million increase in healthcare, $1.5 million surplus I had to cover from the year before to that previous now first fiscal year. We had a $700,000 abatement that we had to address down at the Mall of New Hampshire. So it was a really tough budget cycle. And I said that in my inauguration. I said that my first speech here for the State of the City. I do think that we're experiencing different. It's going to be a different year. I don't think we're going to have the same constraints necessarily that we did in the year prior. I'm confident that with this process, now the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, because we had a number of new members, but now we've all been through this. So I feel really good about the process going forward. I do think that there are some areas that we can look to nip and tuck. But again, what I said, the governor was really clear in her inaugural, and I'll be really clear in saying the same thing. My red line would be gutting any kind of essential city services. Yeah, I think there's the balance that we can always play there where we can make cuts where necessary, but be responsible to the taxpayer as well.
You have a unique kind of perspective on all of the sectors of the city's economy, if you will. What's your assessment of how we're doing?
In our economy?
Yeah.
Well, geez, I'm at a ribbon cutting almost every other day. Heather and her staff have been tremendous. We just did Choice Realty yesterday. I don't know if I saw Craig here, but it feels like we're out and about all the time. And I think that the greatest, so take it from a third-party validator, right? So yesterday, I got a text message that Manchester again had been ranked the hottest housing market in the United States. That doesn't happen because good things aren't happening here, right? So I think the economy is doing well. I think people want to live here. That creates its own pluses and minuses when it comes to affordability and housing prices. But people want to be here. We're consistently ranked one of the top best places to live in the United States. That certainly hasn't changed. And I feel really good. Nothing's changed, I guess, from the last time I sat with you when I said that the promise and potential of Manchester is immense. And there is zero reason why we shouldn't be and cannot be the best mid-sized city in the United States.
You'll be making your decisions about the priorities for the city budget for the coming year. Tomorrow we'll find out what the governor and what Governor Ayotte's priorities are going to be. Can you describe the relationship you have with Governor Ayotte and how that might benefit the city and how it might be different from the last few years?
Sure. I have a wonderful relationship with the governor. Going back to when I was in the mayor's office in 2006, and she was Attorney General, and then through her first race for Senate in 2010. I spent some time last year with her campaigning. I think she really laid out a lot of what her priorities were in her inaugural. I think she was very clear that this is going to be a difficult budget cycle for the state, but her bright red line was impacting the most vulnerable among us. And I think she has an iron spine, and I think she's going to stick to that pledge and promise. And if there are things that I see as mayor of Manchester, she has an incredible team around her. I have no doubt that we'd be able to reach out and say, hey, have you thought about this? But I'm going to be watching just like everybody else. Yeah.
Are you anticipating or maybe even hoping for investments that might come from the state of New Hampshire into the state's largest city that we haven't had before?
Well, I'll reserve judgment on that for now. I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is hearing some, or at least either now or in April when she does her State of the State, but housing. Progress on housing. I meant that sincerely. It's not just a line. When I talk to anybody throughout the city, housing is one of the biggest, or the biggest issue for them. And I know this was a real centerpiece of the things she had done on the campaign, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. Also, I saw yesterday she did an interview with WMUR where she talked about adding bail reform to the budget rider bill. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited to see that take kind of momentum through the budget process. But in terms of the dollars and cents, now sitting in one of these executive seats, I want to give them the space that they need to make decisions, and more than happy to talk with the legislature and them. I'm not shy about going up there. I've done it twice already this year, so if there's something that I see, I'm sure we'll make calls.
You mentioned housing and bail reform, so let's tackle those. The housing percentage, 0.6 vacancy, I wasn't aware of that. That's a shockingly small number. You hinted at some innovative solutions and the housing champion component. Can you talk a little bit more? And I know you've got some news that you're going to be making sometime soon, but can you talk a little bit more about what you envision at a high level of what innovative solutions might look like.
Yeah, so these things could be pallets or like 3D printed housing. We have a 3D printed house that's coming into the city of Manchester later on this spring. Yes. But you can look at, I did a meeting, actually the mayors around the state, we try and meet quarterly. Mm-hmm. And one of our last quarterly meetings, we went out to Rochester, Dover area, and we got a presentation on a 3D printed community that had been built out there. So, I mean, I think you can look for some of these really interesting, innovative ways. And I think I joked at the time, there's a town in Texas that has 100 3D printed houses, and they basically stood up this town overnight with just 3D printed homes. And I said, well, to hell with everything is bigger in Texas. In Manchester, I want 101, right? Land is finite. They're not making any more of it, right? So we have to identify like a parcel of land that would work for something like that. But I think, as I talked to the fire marshal and the planning and community development department, there's no reason why one of these kinds of buildings couldn't be taken up to code and making sure. I mean, we have cold winters, obviously, so you want to make sure that it's insulated and protects you from the elements. But I mean, I think there's a number of things that we can do. Certainly on the regulatory side as well. The zoning rewrite, I think, is a big piece of that, and a generational opportunity to bring in more housing to the city of Manchester.
Do we have? I remember you talking about this last year, like the value of the multifamily homes and trying to make best possible use of the space we have. Do we have open space in Manchester to build new and have?
There's a few. So Waterworks owns a number of parcels of land. That's come before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen a couple times where they would deem something surplus. There's another area up in Northwest that up in the northwest part of the city that I've had my eyes on as well. But there's Hackett Hill, certainly. That's a big piece of the puzzle going forward. And then the grandest piece of all would be the YDC, and I think that's a process that's really going to start and get underway. The process is going to get underway this year, but in terms of any kind of development on that property, I view that as much more long-term. I grew up in Salem, and I mean, I remember going to the horse track on Saturdays, and now to see what they've done with the Tuscan Village down there. I was talking with Joe Farrow the other day, and that's been a 15-year process, and it is still going. Right, so that's the kind of time frame. But I think this is one of the last big pieces of land. I mean, so certainly in the state of Manchester, but in the state of New Hampshire, and we've got to get this right. And this isn't just a piece of land for the north end, it's a piece of land for the entire city, right? So how I kind of envision this process is doing town halls towards the end of the year and saying, all right, what do we want? We have this amazing property, and what do we want as a city? Where do we see this going? And it'll be really interesting because I'm sure there are going to be some people who say cow pastures, and then some people who say Tuscan Village. So trying to find that midterm or compromise, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Bail reform was your first priority in your speech, very passionate, and obviously we've all been watching the news and some of the headlines being made. So House Bill 592 is the one that we're watching. What specifically does it do, and what can this group do to help?
Yeah, so I think it goes, last year I think the number was the big 13. The bail reform that they did last year was on those 13 most offensive offenses, right? And so they took a bite at the apple on that, and I said at the time, we got to go further. It's the violent and the repeat offenders. But clearly, I think magistrates are a part of the issue here, because there is a requirement in the RSA that they're supposed to consider public safety when they release an individual. How stabbing somebody 13 times in the middle of a downtown is not a threat to public safety is just absolutely beyond me. I don't understand how you can come to that determination. And I appreciate I always try and see things from other people's viewpoints, and I appreciate the arguments that are made when it comes to civil liberties. But what about the civil liberties of the people at the McLean Law Firm who just want to walk from there to the parking garage? What about the civil liberties of the Chamber? You're right there on Hanover Street, trying to walk around during the day. What about the people who were eating dinner at Evo that night and looked out of the damn windows and saw a stabbing going on? What about their rights? Right. It's unconscionable to me that this is still happening.
You talked about the progress of helping the homeless. You talked about the progress working with MPD, with public safety. But that incident is unnerving and it undermines progress. Yeah. What's your message to the downtown folks who might have seen that and might be sitting in this room saying, I can't do this much longer. Yeah. I'm hearing your stats of improvement, but oh my God.
Yeah. So this is the tough part. The progress has been clear. And Chief Mark can rattle off these statistics better than I can, but the progress has been clear in Manchester on public safety. Crime has been going down in the city, and that's empirical. But when you have situations like this, it makes it much harder to make that argument, despite what the data is telling us. But I think this is where it's incumbent upon us to talk about what the challenges that we have are and what the fixes are, and that's, I think, what we've been trying to do over the last few days. But I get it. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I do think that the work of the MPD, the work of the city to better the perception of the city of Manchester can easily get thrown out the window by one example like this. Yeah. And it's atrocious. But I think it's hard, but I think sometimes we do have to take that 30,000-foot level view and say, here's been the trend over the last few years. Crime has markedly gone down. Overdoses have significantly fallen 2024 over 2023. I remember, every day in my office, I would get an email at 6:35 in the morning about an encampment that was on Merrimack Street lining Veterans Park. And there was 20, 30 individuals that were there. And for months, we were working on that problem. And that's gone now. That problem has been eliminated. I think if you look at the progress that we've made in our parks and in our downtown, the city of Manchester is in a good place right now. Can we do better? 1,000%. That's why I've done 3 interviews with WMUR over the last 2 days. And yeah.
Let's talk public education. You cited some of the progress being made in public schools, made headlines not too long ago with the conversation about construction of a new school. And
I recall.
So can you update everyone on where that project is and how things are proceeding?
Yeah, so I think it was always important to remember that the priority 1 didn't stop, right? It was the one piece of priority 1. So the renovation on the 4 middle schools had always been ongoing during that time. And the last piece of this puzzle was effectively, at the end of the day, to kind of simplify it, was a land swap. Where there's a school, there's going to be a park. Where there's a park, there's going to be a school. But so that process continues to be ongoing now. And in the next 2.5 years or so, hopefully we'll see the renovations being complete and the new school being opened.
All right, so I know we only have a few minutes left, so let me change gears on you a little bit. Do you have a moment in time, or perhaps a day in this first kind of full year plus of serving as the city's mayor, that is your motivator to get you out of the house in the morning?
I don't think I need one.
Yeah?
I like I said at the beginning of the speech, I genuinely love this job. I mean, when I look at the ability every day to wake up and say, you know what, I'm tired of hearing the numbers on homeless veterans. Oh yeah, I'm mayor. I can do something about that, right? And it was just, it's amazing. It's amazing how popular you get when you get elected to an office. People take your phone calls, right? So having the ability to make a phone call and say, look, we want to do something on this. I think it gets lost in the shuffle sometimes because I'm the elected official. I'm the one that people see up here. But our department heads are incredible. Every day I rely on their judgment to be able to get something accomplished. Somebody said it to me one time, and I thought it was really great. At the end of the day, being an executive is like being an archer. So you're the one that pulls back the arrow, and you point it in the direction that you want it to head, and then you release it. And then it gets acted upon by outside forces. Right? So if you don't have good people like we do in this room, if we don't have good department heads, if we don't have good businesses that are investing, that arrow is going to go all screwy and haywire. But if you have good people around you, if you're a good person, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you can make a real difference. And when I get reports back from successes at the engagement center or successes on veterans, or I talk to police officers, and with the exception of this week, obviously it's been difficult, but when you can see the real tangible progress, that's my drug, right? I love it. I don't need, there's a difference. I said this in all my, you were there, but I said this in all my high school graduation speeches.
I was not at your high school graduation.
I think we both had more hair back then, right? But I said this at all the high school graduations. There's a difference between motivation and discipline, right? So you go to the gym, you hear a motivating song, you work hard for that minute and a half you're in the middle of a set, right? But discipline is getting up when the weather's crappy, it's cold, and you don't want to go to the gym. So to me, motivation can be fleeting, but it's the discipline to say, you know what, we're making a difference. We're making progress. I was saying this beforehand. When a naval vessel is at sea and it's going at full steam ahead, 25 knots, and they slam on the brakes. How long does it take for that naval vessel to stop and turn around? 6 miles. It has to drift for 6 miles before it can make any course corrections, right? So progress can be slow, but I do think that we're making good progress here, and I'm really excited about the potential that we have in the years to come.
All right, let me finish with where I started, and that's with Brielle. How are you doing? Yeah. How are you balancing the demands of this kind of a job with the demands of being a new daddy, and how's Veronica doing? She's
amazing. She is incredible. I wasn't saying that for points during the speech. She is an absolute rock star. It's tough, right? But that's another thing that I don't need the motivation to try and be a good dad. Sure. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I was thinking about it before, if I'm blessed enough to be here next year to give another State of the City, it is going to be the most obnoxious 35 minutes you've ever seen, because it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation of all the pictures from our first trip to Hannaford's, and you guys, I'm going to be the most obnoxious girl dad you've ever seen. Yeah. It's incredible. It is such a blessing. We always wanted to be parents. This is our first, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, I don't need motivation to get up in the morning, and she's still at Elliott Hospital. Some of you, I've talked to you about this, but Brielle is still at Elliott Hospital and is going to be there for a little while longer. She's doing great. She's meeting all of her benchmarks, and she's healthy, and mom is healthy and happy as well. But so we both go there throughout the day, and yeah, it certainly puts things in perspective. Yeah. It's easy, I think, sometimes, when you're in the office and something tough is going on and you feel like everything is crashing down on your head, and you're like, am I even going to remember this next year? Like, is this really something to be sweating over right now? That's not to say that you shouldn't care about the things that are going on in your life, but it certainly helps bring perspective that I don't think that you can never fully appreciate until it happens, right? Until you become a dad. So 11 days in, I think we're doing all right so far. There you go. And so for at least the next couple of months, or however long Brielle's going to be there, if he's not picking up the phone at noon, cut him a break. He's probably with his kid. Right. So, well, Jay Ruais, thank you. We appreciate you. On behalf of Consigli and Eversource and Heather, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot, man. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.